Charles Oliveira shocks the world. He does it again. I swear, Charles Oliveira is like, he's that one fighter that anytime I go against him, he wins. And the one time that I go for him, he loses. But honestly, I gotta say, what this guy has done is impressive. It's GOAT status. Like, what Charles Oliveira has reached at this point is GOAT status, in my opinion. Like, honestly, if it wasn't for Islam Makhachev, I would consider Charles Oliveira the GOAT of 155 because he's done it all. I believe that he has the most finishes now in lightweight, if I'm not mistaken. And if you look at the UFC the rankings, not the standings, the rankings. If you look at the rankings, you see that Charles Oliveira is number 1. Islam is the champion. But below that, you see that Charles Oliveira has finished everyone. Literally, like, it's like when a hitman has, like, you know, they have to get rid of people and then you mark X's on their faces. That's literally the rankings at 155. He took care of Beneil, he took care of Gaethje, he took care of Chandler, and he took care of Poirier. And honestly, I still don't make him favorite in a rematch against Islam. I still think Islam's a savage, but I want to see Charles Oliveira get his redemption because, well, first of all, I'm not gonna pretend like I'm Oliveira's biggest fan, because I did make a TikTok and a YouTube short with my prediction that I was actually not rooting for, but I thought personally that Beneil Dariush was gonna win because I thought that Oliveira's mentality wasn't there. I thought he still had, you know, the PTSD from losing to Islam, and I just didn't think he was there mentally because, like I said, you know, the PTSD loss against Islam, and I heard him say in an interview that he didn't watch the fight back against Islam, and I was like, okay, like, I don't think he's mentally there. And he also said, like, it wasn't his day that day, but my opinion is, like, I think Charles Oliveira is an absolute talent, like, honestly, GOAT status. But the thing is, like, these Russians, their mentality isn't like, oh, today I have a good day, today I have a bad day. Like, for them, it's like do or die. Like, every fight for them is like, I'm not walking out of here until like the other person's finished. You know, like, the floor, the bare minimum, the standards of those Russians, of those Dagestanis are so high that I feel like mentally is very tough to compete against them as well. So enough of that. I just want to praise Charles because Charles the Bronx he's pretty much done it all if you really think about it. Like, the only thing, in my opinion, stopping him from becoming the GOAT is Islam. And here's the thing, if he gets it done against Islam, forget Khabib, forget Islam, forget anyone that's been at lightweight. The GOAT will be Charles Oliveira. Like, the one thing stopping him is the one thing stopping his trajectory is Islam. And I have a feeling that once they fight, and if Charles Oliveira is able to beat Islam Makhachev, forget it. Like, this guy, I think he's gonna retire at that point. I think he'll retire, you know, like in his prime, like Khabib did. And honestly, good for him. But I gotta say, like, I feel bad for not rooting for Charles because I'm Hispanic, I'm Latino, and I always support the Latinos when it comes to a fight. Like, even if they're like crappier, I tend to always root for the Latino fighter. And in this fight, before I move on to the next take, in this fight, Beneil and Charles, I like both guys. I think they're both great fighters. I like them as like people. They seem like they're chill as hell. But I just, honestly, I didn't, like, how do I say this? I did not expect Charles Oliveira to go out and do what he did. Like, in my opinion, this is the best Charles Oliveira I've seen. Like, this fight is what I call Charles Oliveira prime. In fact, I think that in this fight, Charles Oliveira demonstrated that he's improved immensely. I think this Charles Oliveira is better than the Charles Oliveira that won the belt against Chandler and won the belt against Poirier. I think this Oliveira beats the past Oliveira from like a year or 2 years ago. I really believe so. Like, I did not expect Oliveira to show up like this in such a dominant fashion from like the beginning of the first round. He came in and he put pressure on Beneil Dariush. Beneil Dariush did not have a single response, and Oliveira really surprised me with those high kicks to the head. Although Beneil Dariush, he did cover, he had his hands up, he still ate those kicks. And the second kick that Oliveira hit Beneil Dariush with, that pretty much, wobbled him, and Oliveira finished him. He finished him. And another thing I noticed in this fight, which was very quick, it was finished in the first round. But one thing I noticed in this fight about Charles is that, unlike we saw against Islam, we pretty much saw the old Oliveira, but improved. Because in this fight, Oliveira was on his back, and we know that Oliveira is dangerous on his back, and that's what makes him special. Because in MMA, especially when you're competing in the UFC, it is very difficult to pull a submission when you're laying on your back. Normally, you always want to be on top in MMA. But this guy, in this fight, he was very comfortable on his back, like he was in the past. We did not see an uncomfortable version of Charles Oliveira, because against Islam, he did look uncomfortable, and he was on his back, and Islam was able to choke him with a triangle choke. And we saw that Oliveira did not have a problem being on the back, and he couldn't get the submission. No worries. He was actually defending the ground and pound of Beneil Dariush. He was actually responding back with kicks, with anything, with fists, with elbows, whatever. But like, wow, I literally, this fight, Charles Oliveira came in. He reminds me of Dragon Ball, when the characters, they go Super Saiyan and they change like their hair color, and they just become a lot more powerful. In a way, this is what happened to Charles Oliveira, because before this fight, he had black hair and he dyed it blonde, and look what he did. He demonstrated the prime version of himself. He demonstrated the best version of himself that night. And honestly, I'm also surprised that Charles Oliveira, I didn't know this, but he's one of the most famous UFC fighters in the planet. I think he has the 5th most followers on Instagram. He's low-key become a world superstar without speaking English, which is freaking insane. Like, the guy was in Canada. He was in Vancouver. I think that was Vancouver. But anyways, he was in Canada, and he yells in English, because this is the first time I think he even spoke English in a post-fight interview. He said in English, "Who is the champ?" And you can hear the whole crowd in Vancouver yell, "Charles Oliveira." Like, it's insane how much support Charles Oliveira has worldwide. And honestly, what is next for Charles Oliveira? I think there's no question. Even Dana White said it. The rematch against Islam Makhachev has to take place. And I want Charles to win. My heart says Charles, because he's Brazilian, and I love Brazil. But Islam's a savage. But I think if the fight does not take place in Abu Dhabi, it has to take place in somewhere neutral, like Australia, or even here in America, or somewhere neutral. Don't make it in Abu Dhabi, because in Abu Dhabi, we know that, in Abu Dhabi, everything is paid for the Dagestan team, for their hotel room, their food. Everything gets paid for when it comes to Islam and Habib's team doing their camp over there. So they have to make the fight neutral, because also, let's not forget that, I don't want to make like excuses for Charles, but in that fight against Islam was used to, because he was doing camp there for like a month or 2 months longer than Charles. So he got used to, like, you know, the sleeping schedule, the weather, and he was very comfortable because they took care of him over there. And because, you know, because of the religion from the Dagestanis, they're Muslim, and Abu Dhabi, they're Muslim, so they help each other, they're brothers. And he has that, you know, home advantage. So this rematch has to take place in somewhere neutral, and honestly, I can't wait. I'm gonna have my popcorn ready, and if I do work that day, I'm calling out. Like, I gotta see that fight. Everyone wants to see that fight, and I'm telling you, if Charles Oliveira can stop Islam, he is undisputed the GOAT over Khabib. I don't care if Khabib has, you know, a 29-0 record. He tops Khabib. This is my take on this, you know, post-fight review. And let me know, do you think that Charles Oliveira, this Charles Oliveira that we saw, can beat Islam in a neutral territory? Let me know if you agree with me down below in the comments. And yeah, who do you have winning, Charles or Islam, in the rematch fight? Let me know your opinions down below in the comments. I'll respond to them. And yeah, guys, I'll catch you guys next time. I'm out.